There was a moment around 195,000 years ago when the entire human species nearly ended. Not most of us, not a percentage. Almost all of us. And the strange part is almost nobody knows it happened. If you trace human DNA back far enough, you hit a wall, a bottleneck, a point where the genetic diversity of our entire species collapses down to something terrifyingly small. Geneticists estimate the surviving population may have dropped to as few as 1,000 to 2,000 breeding individuals. Not 2,000 in one country, 2,000 on the whole planet. For context, more people than that are in a single stadium section tonight. So what happened? The climate broke. Around 195,000 to 123,000 years ago, Earth slid into one of the harshest glacial periods in its history. Southern Africa, where many early humans lived, dried into something close to uninhabitable. Forests collapsed into grassland, then grassland collapsed into desert. Rivers vanished. Food sources that had sustained generations simply disappeared. Most of the population didn't migrate. They didn't adapt. They died. Quietly in small groups, scattered across a drying continent with no idea they were living through the closest call our species would ever face. But somewhere, a handful of groups survived. And the evidence for where is almost unbelievable. Coves along the southern coast of South Africa, near a region called Pinnacle Point, show signs of continuous human occupation through the worst of this period. Why there? The coastline. While the interior of the continent turned to dust, the coast offered something nothing else could. A stable, year-round food source that didn't depend on rainfall. Shellfish, mussels, clams, anything clinging to the rocks at low tide. It didn't migrate, it didn't die in a drought. It was just there every single day, whether the rains came or not. This wasn't luck stumbled into once. Researchers have found tools, pigments, and evidence of fire used stacked in layers spanning tens of thousands of years at these sites. A population clinging to a narrow strip of coastline, eating shellfish through generation after generation, while the rest of the continent emptied out behind them. Everyone alive today, every single human on Earth, may trace back to a population that small, hiding on a coastline that narrow, surviving on food that simple. And here's where it gets unsettling. This wasn't the only near miss. Some researchers studying ancient DNA have proposed an even earlier crash, around 900,000 years ago, where the ancestral population may have shrunk to a similarly small number for an extraordinarily long stretch of time. That theory is still debated, still being tested against new genetic data. But even without it, the African bottleneck alone tells you something most people never sit with. The human story was not a steady climb. It was a near extinction event survived by a population smaller than your hometown's high school. So why did this tiny group make it when so many others didn't? It wasn't strength, it wasn't numbers, it was a shift in food source nobody saw coming. A discovery that the ocean didn't care about droughts the way the land did. It was a coastline at exactly the right place, found by exactly the right group at exactly the right time. Move that population 100 miles inland, and there's a real chance none of us exist. No cities, no languages, no version of you reading this right now. Just an empty branch on a family tree nobody would ever know was missing because there'd be no one left to notice. That's the part that should sit with you. Every person who has ever lived, every war, every invention, every name written in history, all of it traces back through a population small enough to fit in a single neighborhood, clinging to rocks at low tide, eating shellfish through a drought that lasted longer than entire civilizations now last. We talk about humanity like it was inevitable. It wasn't. It was a coin flip that landed the right way exactly once, on a strip of coastline most people have never heard of, held together by people who had no idea they were the last ones standing. You are not here because humanity was destined to survive.